I am honored to introduce you to my next guest. Bruce Summers has been directing and producing DRTV campaigns since 1991. In 1999, he founded Syncbox Media to combine his filmmaking skills with the creative process of branded direct response TV and has generated more than $3 billion of revenue for some of the biggest companies in the world. He's also the son of possibly the most beloved, iconic actress and direct response spokesperson in history, and we'll hear more about that. And here he is. Bruce Summers is here on the pitch. Good to see you, buddy.
Nice to see you.
Oh, this is great to have you sitting there. Now, usually I start by establishing how we met and how we know each other, but this is a little different because I actually met your mom, and for those idiots who haven't figured it out, Suzanne Summers, before I met you. Do you recall that?
I don't. No, I don't.
Really? I'm sure I shared that with you 25 times.
At some point, yes.
Well, I met your...
And you're the first person that shared that with me.
No, every actor in town has probably worked with your mom over the years because she's worked so long, right?
Exactly.
Step by Step.
Oh, right.
She was the mom in the family.
Yes.
I was some car salesman. I mean, it was like a nothing thing. But here's what I remember. She was so sweet. And I was trying to think of things to talk to her about. And we're sitting in the makeup room, and we're talking about your sister's jeans.
Oh, right.
Right? I mean, jeans, not
right.
Not
right, exactly.
Blue jeans.
Not genetics.
Not genetics. Because she was making embroidering.
And she made 2 pairs that she sent to Madonna and Sandra Bernhardt.
Wow.
And those 2 were partying together or something and came out of a club wearing them. And it turned into $1 million business for her.
You're kidding?
Yeah. Painted jeans.
Painted, that's what it was.
Yeah.
I was acting like I was going to buy some, but I just wanted to talk to your mom.
Exactly.
She was very sweet.
Yeah, you would have been very progressive had you worn them.
Well, I was in the right town.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so then let's go forward.
Yes.
Because we met because I was hired to host a couple of shows for you. And the first one, do you remember?
Floormate.
Yes, Hoover.
Yes. Hoover Floormate.
Floormate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you remember which week it was? Do you remember when it was?
I would say it's been, you mean how many years ago?
Well, no, but there was an
No,
event.
I don't remember.
There was an event that happened. We worked the week of 9/11.
Oh, my goodness.
That shoot almost got canceled. And what I don't think you or I knew until we left the lot that day is that we were on lockdown. They weren't going to let us out if we wrapped early, which we never do.
Right. No worries there.
Exactly.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
And then the other job we did together, I assume nothing happened that week. We did. Do you remember? It was Epson.
That's
Epson
right.
Brothers.
That's right.
Yeah. So we worked a couple times together.
Exactly.
Well, I have to say, as a director, you remind me of somebody. You'll never guess who.
Okay.
Okay, but Phil Jackson.
Oh.
And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
You have this Zen quality. I don't know if you're reading your mom's books or what's going on, but I'm serious. On the set, this guy, we're stressful actors. And I look over and the smile you see now, it's the same smile. He's laid back. Everything's fine. Are you always that way?
Not always, but on the set, there's something interesting that happens because first off, I feel so lucky that we get to do that for a living. And I work 95% of the time for the 5% of production because that's the fun part.
Right.
And the other thing is there are all these the clients and producers and people that I hire or people that I work for that are usually very worried about, are we going to make our day? Are we going to get all the footage? And the reality is it always works out. It always does. And part of that is because I know where, if we are running behind, I know where we can cut and get to the end.
Right.
But there's a comfort factor of we're not curing cancer here, so let's have fun. And I do think that I'm setting the tone. I do think that that's important.
Yes.
And there could be a shitstorm behind the set, but if the talent on set feels any of the anxiety of anyone else, it's going to be reflected in the energy. And so I have a responsibility.
Directors, be listening to that because what I usually see is this happening back here, and it doesn't make you feel great.
Yeah.
All right, so here's what I want to ask you about, because to me, and I think to most people in the country that think, okay, Bruce Summers, Suzanne Summers' son, I mean, to people, they're going to think this kid grew up like TV, Hollywood royalty. He's going to be messed up. There's no way this guy is going to come out of this normal. How can it be that you are, and I mean this, like one of the most down-to-earth, normal people, sharp too, coming out of an iconic, like Chrissy was your mom. How does that happen?
Well, when you get out of rehab, there's
Is that the truth?
I think that I was lucky in that I wasn't born into it. When I was young, and I say we because she's only 19 years older than I am.
Oh. Is that true, or are you just making her feel good?
No, that's true. That's true.
She looks like she is.
She's
for sure.
terrible at math, and always tried to shave 2 years off. And now she's 68, and she's on Dancing with the Stars now.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm very proud of her.
Yes.
But she also just if that's what 68 looks like for a smidgen of people, that's something to shoot for.
Right.
But the reality is when I was a kid, we were poor. And there were a couple nights where I'd look down and it's like, I guess we're having a baked potato for dinner. And it's when you're poor, you don't feel like you're poor. You just know that other people have a lot more stuff, but you don't feel less than. And I think that those were grounding years. When Three's Company hit,
How old were you then?
I was 11.
Okay.
And very quickly, my mother realized, okay, this is a chaotic town, and little did we know that I was in the same age bracket as Emilio Estevez and Charlie Sheen, and I probably would have been running around with them because I would seek that kind of energy. But I went to boarding school. And she said, try it for 2 weeks. If you don't like it, come home.
Okay.
And I got up there, and I loved it. Because it was
you were away from it then
I was kind of protected
from the craziness.
And that's not to say that I didn't make some mistakes. I didn't sort of let some of it get to my head at a certain point.
Yeah.
But I think it was, it was this needle that had to rewrite itself.
Right.
But we're all pretty damn lucky. So that's
for you to make it out of that. I mean, because that's amazing. So, and I know that you're very important to her for a lot of reasons. Obviously, you're the son, but you're also her gadget guy. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true.
I happen to have my very own gadget guy, and he makes house calls because he just happens to be my son, Bruce Summers.
Hey, Ma.
In fact, she just emailed me something like, how do I? And I'm always, Mom, I actually have to do work for a living. So I sometimes I'll just log into her computer and fix stuff.
Right.
And then log out, and she doesn't know. She's like, it just fixed itself. I don't know.
So was having her as a mom in the TV business, did that influence what you wanted to do? How did you get into TV and film and all that?
I don't think I knew that there were other things. And I started out as an actor. And I remember I was up at UC Berkeley acting. I mean, not that that's where you go for acting, but I was a dramatic arts major, and my heart was set on it, and I was hell-bent. And one day I realized I'm not that good. And for about 3 or 4 months, I was trying to figure out, well, what do I do now? And I took a directing class, and everything fell into place. I realized, sort of like Walter Alston or Tommy Lasorda. Well, Tommy was a good baseball player, but people who are bad baseball players and good managers.
Yep.
I realized, okay, I needed to learn the vernacular and learn some of the techniques so that I could communicate. I'd probably be okay now because I don't need it. But I was not good then. I
can relate. I've been there many times. So how did the path of direct response, because you're into TV and film, and then your mom is going from TV to direct response, how did all that converge, or did it?
It did, actually. The interesting thing is Thigh Master was her first big thing, and that was huge in
every way.
Exactly. And now there's the Thigh Master Vibrato, so it's like starting a new wave. But the that kind of revitalized her career, or at least sent her in a different trajectory, because that was between Three's Company and Step by Step. And suddenly it's this viable way to make money. And she was sort of making that conversion from being so identified as Chrissy Snow, so identified as an actress, and now it's kind of the last thing you say about her. There's writing, there's direct response entrepreneur, and then you get to actress usually.
How do you explain, because what she has accomplished, just to go from that level of TV stardom to really being one of the biggest in the direct response world and the success she's had, what is it about her? I know I have some thoughts, but what do you think?
I think it's adversity. I think that when you put a challenge in front of some people, they're either going to recoil and regroup, and other people are going to say, I got to get over this. I got to climb this wall. And it's 1,000,000 to 1 that she would come from this small town in Northern California and become Chrissy Snow on what ended up being the number one. Yeah.
What year is 70s?
77 was the first year.
Oh, boy, I remember it well.
And it was 5 years, and then she had the contract dispute, and it lasted a year after that. You know, they didn't respect the chemistry between those three.
Right.
But a major depression, which I can understand and relate to, that she went through when it was finished, because that's all she knew. Now what? And the next stage was she sat down and this book started pouring out of her, and she wrote her autobiography and became the face of adult children of alcoholics. And then she went to Vegas. And funny story, I remember I was there, obviously opening night is a special thing. She was opening at the MGM Grand. And before she walks on, Bill Cosby calls her and says, "Suzanne, good luck." And she goes, "Well, thank you, Bill." Like, she didn't know him,
right,
but, maybe they bumped into each other at a party. And he said, "By the way, Suzanne, you don't have an act." And it ended there. And it sounds horrible, and it kind of is. But the reality is if you, the book Outliers, it takes 10,000 hours to become proficient at something. She didn't have an act yet. So she has started these careers, become proficient at them, and then she climbs that wall and starts another career. And the reality is she's going back to Vegas in a few months, back to MGM Grand.
Wow.
And she has a 4-year deal there. So now, she's obviously done that for many years, but it's something that she's more than comfortable.
Of course.
And a beautiful singer, and she's testing some of her dancing skills right now
Of course.
on Monday nights.
Right. Oh, I was thrilled to see her on there. So, but what quality do you think she has that has made her so successful with direct response, talking to the camera, getting people to pick up the phone?
She doesn't BS anyone. Her brand is sincerity. And I think that sincerity comes from surviving. She had a crappy childhood. Growing up with an abusive alcoholic father is not ideal. And coming out of that and figuring out how to make it in this business, which we both know it's a tough business. One of my daughters wants to get into this business, and I'm doing everything I can to use reverse psychology on how
good luck with
terrible.
that.
Exactly.
Especially in this town. Yeah.
Exactly. It's so attractive.
Yeah.
But I think that survival instinct has forced her to constantly be honest. When she basically got fired from Three's Company, rather than make up excuses, eventually she realized, I just need to come clean with that. Then she came clean in her autobiography. Then she got cancer. Then she, it's like all of these things, and she just shares her insights on her experiences. She's not telling people what to do or how to do it. She's saying, here's what I did. Here's what worked for me. If that helps you, I'm grateful. And I think she takes that, when she's looking at the camera, like sometimes I'll look at her because I have directed most of her direct response spots. And sometimes I'll look at her and say, you know what, we call it the bullshit light.
Yeah.
The bullshit light went off a little bit. I think you have something more sincere, and she knows exactly what I mean. And it's usually because it's getting late and she might just be a little tired. It's not because she's trying to be insincere.
So, in the fact that you have been directing her quite often, how is that dynamic?
Oh, it's so easy for the two of us.
Oh, really?
Because it's shorthand.
Yeah.
Like sometimes, sometimes I coddle new talent that I don't know. It's like, what's
right here? He coddled me a lot.
Yeah. Well, you're being modest because you were a pro. Those were so easy. Because remember, I had big jib arm shots and everything, and demos that could have gone south, and you were nailing it. But working with her, it's sometimes I just look at her and say, let's do another one. And she knows exactly what that head nod means.
So interesting.
Yeah.
The mother-son dynamic. Okay, let's talk for a few minutes about Syncbox, because that's your company.
Yes.
Give us the philosophy of what you do over there.
Syncbox is a creative agency. It started because I wanted to be a filmmaker, and I got out of film school and got my parents wouldn't hire me. My first job was for LA Gear. Remember the old tennis shoes?
Sure.
And once they saw that, they said, okay, now we'll hire you. And I started, I always wanted to do the prettiest spots I could, hip and cool and funky.
Filmmaker.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when I jumped into direct response, my first spot was the second Thigh Master spot, just the sort of brand extension. And went in that bent. And when I was getting these jobs, I had creative directors saying, that's a great shot, but it's never going to make it in this spot. But sure enough, it started making it in spots, and we attracted the attention of companies like Visa and Microsoft and DirecTV, and suddenly brand response was born. I like to take credit for it. I think it was the zeitgeist of where that niche of advertising was going. We were just on that forward, edge of the envelope. But the reality is we discovered and realized and keep testing this theory that branding and direct response selling are not diametrically opposed. They can actually find a happy union, so that when someone has a new product, they can release it. And if they want it to, if they just want to make money and like get in and out, great, yell and sell. Do something obnoxious, do something very disruptive. If they're trying to create a brand, if they're trying to create something that's going to end up in retail and have some legs and that people want and they want to talk about, which is part of what branding is, you have to think about that. You have to have the right tone, look, and feel. So that's what we do. And
that's your niche more than
our
anything.
Niche. Yeah.
Right.
And our clients are entrepreneurs to Fortune 100s. And I always say our entrepreneurs benefit from the knowledge of process that we learn from Fortune 100s. But Fortune 100s learn from our entrepreneurial experience because they're not entrepreneurs, and they're very risk adverse.
What advice would you give someone who has a product or has an idea? What would you say to them before they jumped in, or maybe they're in the middle of it now?
The first thing I always say is gut check, because it's going to take so much longer and it's going to require so much more equity and maybe not money, although it usually does, but sweat equity. It's constantly being turned down and denied. And if you have the stomach for it, then now you've passed phase one. Phase two is it really going to change my life, me, the consumer? Because at the end of it, we always talk about the 4 pillars of direct response. You have to have problem solution. That's advertising.
Okay.
Generally, especially for a new product, testimonials. Because if it's new to the world, they're not going to believe the voiceover from the sky that says this is fantastic.
Right.
Demonstration. Can you demonstrate what it does? And that's really key. A lot of people, when they jump into it, they don't realize that the close-up of the widget doing its thing is really important, more important than the pretty woman who might be holding it, if that's the direction they go.
Right.
But the last thing is the offer. And the offer really, if you put yourself in the consumer's frame of mind, they're sitting there consciously or subconsciously saying, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
And if it's time or convenience, great. Then is it price driven? And it only has to be one of those, but sometimes it's all of those.
4 pillars.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are good. So where do you see the direct response industry now versus the future? Because I know you're a future thinking guy.
Well, I'm always trying to anticipate the future.
Yeah.
The future is really being dictated by how digital consumption and internet consumption is happening, and now mobile. While I was waiting here, I did something that I normally would do on my computer or even my iPad, and now I'm having this very fruitful experience on my phone. The reality is just 5 years ago, we would do a 2-minute and a 1-minute spot for a client. Now, there's no way we would just do that. It's minimum 5 elements. You need a 2-minute and 1 minute, but they need to be tailored if they're going to be on your homepage, which everyone has. If you don't have a website, don't bother.
Right.
Television is still the greatest medium for announcing yourself. It's biggest net, tallest mountain with the biggest megaphone, but it's a terrible conversion tool. Everyone's going to go online. So you want to take those spots and make sure they're online, but you have to change the thinking. Now someone's on the site, so you're not trying to drive them to the site. So really what you want to do is retool that creative. But then there's the other spot that you want to put in, on YouTube, buy some pre-roll, or 15-second spots that you can buy throughout publications online. And those are slightly different. Like, let's say you're doing a yell and sell. Then a lot of people want to start with something kind of obnoxious or a problem or something. It's really, you have to imagine, most people are seeing those spots with the volume muted. So that's the time where, one of the few times where branding trumps direct response in terms of best practices. You need those engaging visuals. And I'm not saying there needs to be the most expensive camera and the most beautiful lighting, but whatever those first few images are, it needs to be really engaging, because usually 3, 6 seconds, whatever format you buy, people are going to skip it.
Bruce, I want to thank you for coming in.
My
this
pleasure.
Has been great, and one of the nicest guys out there. I don't know how that happened, but he's got a nice mom, so maybe that was, she did something right, Suzanne. Good job, thumbs up. So I have Syncbox Media on the screen there.
Yes, Syncbox Media, syncbox.com.
That's how people can find you if they need to track you down for that niche,
exactly,
that brand.